Hey guys, MrPokke here. So I've actually cleared out the entirety of the special routes for Beyond the Rails, which is going to be NTE's endgame content, 3-starring both floor 10 as well as floor 9. I really dislike playing the floor 8 because my second team is just not going to be too strong, specifically running cheese on the first half against the 3 fishes. Honestly, if I really wanted to grind this out, I probably could, but we want to wait for Hunter level 45, where we can basically bring our units to level 70, and the overall progression is going to be a lot easier. So if you guys have been wondering why is this so difficult because you're only at level 60 or even level 50, don't worry about it, because as a complete free to play, I'm pretty sure that once you hit level 4500 level, we still have 16 more days. Pretty much everyone in the server should be able to just get full clear for our very first Beyond the Rails, right? Just a quick little precursor, but today's main topic is not so much about the endgame content clear. I just mainly want to talk about my experience using Hotori as one of, if not my favorite DPS, or rather I kind of just want to talk a little bit about my experience with Hotori, using her in the full Blossom team alongside with Nanali MC, which is going to be with Zero, as well as Jiuyuan. This team is pretty much considerably stronger than my second team, which is at this moment Cheese, Daffodil, Sakiri, as well as Hanyo. I unfortunately do not have Hard Dog, and I don't really want to raise skill for Cheese, but generally I just found this teams to be one of, if not the best performing DPS teams as of right now. So I want to just share with you guys a little bit of 2 cents. How do you guys raise up Hotori? How do you guys use her in a Nanali Bloom team? The right rotations, investments for your arcs, as per ability, and so on. So without further ado, let's just jump in. Okay, so the number one thing for Hotori is that her overall kit is actually not so much of a support. She's not really a support unit that you pull for Nanali, but more so of a sub DPS that supplements your overall Blossom damage with her big personal damage, specifically from the ultimate. Because for Hotori specifically, if you take a look into her abilities, she has the effect of essentially preventing your Vita Butt from pausing their attacks during time stop. So you really need to activate this to get the full benefits of the Blossom team, which you can then combine with Jiuyuan, raising up the cap to 6, and you can have 6 Vita Butts at the same time, dealing absolutely insane amount of damage to the enemy. And in case you guys didn't know how the Vita Butt formula works over here, this Vita Butt, it scales based on your levels as you progress up higher and higher, as well as your cycle intensity. So it does not really give a damn about your crit and whatsoever, which means as your level goes to level 70 or even level 80 later on, the Vita Butt damage can go up even higher than whatever we see right now. So generally, my current Vita Butt with my main MC as our current highest cycle intensity unit at 292, I'm doing around 3.4 to 3.5k per Vita Butt hit, and then if you multiply by 6, that's going to be 6 individual hits. So when I get my level to be even higher, okay, even better cycle intensity stats, then this Vita Butt's damage is just going to scale on even higher and higher, which I would say is going to be even more significant compared to like your crit ratio if you cannot unlock the access to having like the right substats for having specifically crit rate, crit damage, as well as the damage percentage or the attack. So I would say Hotori, especially if you're going to be using her in like a Vita Butt team for your Blossom, she's going to be offering a significant damage amplification, because this ultimate during your endgame content, it literally pauses the timer required for you to beat the stage. The entire time you're doing your ultimate, the timer actually does not go down, which means that you're technically cheating out the game's in-game timer limit to get 3 stars for your endgame content, which is why I think her kit is honestly extremely interesting, right? So that's gonna be the main gist with Hotori. I just want a couple of pointers. For your basic attack, you frankly do not need to level this whatsoever, because your main usage of Hotori is just simply carries a skill one time, start recording the skills, then eventually when the gauge is going to be full, cast your ultimate subsequently, and all of your damage during your ultimate is based purely on your ultimate damage ratio. So you can completely ignore this basic, can even leave it at level 1 to save you a little bit more of the beetle coins, and just raise on your skill as well as ultimate, with ultimate taking a higher priority. Speaking of skills, for her, this thingy of the duplication, it will only copy your support skill and redirect skills, so not including your ultimates, are just going to be these 2 things right here. The main usage advantage of this skill, I would say, is definitely going to be copying your MC's skill, which will instantly charge up to 100% of your S per cycle, which means after Hotori cards are out and you get a duplicated skill, you actually get back a full gauge without using MC skill by itself, effectively doubling your overall Vita butt generation because of the duplication over here. So that is going to be the main gist of this over here. For the support skill, it's just going to be your intro skill damage, so it's not going to be too important. For the life skill, this is honestly not that bad because you can unlock more of your auction items, which is going to be something that you require if you take a look into your main map right here. Okay, the reason why you want to go for the auction upgrade for Hotori is that you want to collect as many of these tokens as possible, which is going to allow you to upgrade your Mamon, right? Specifically the Covetus coin. This is going to be a weekly additional font generation, so the more you upgrade this, the more fonts you actually get in the future. So you can see right here, my current Mamon level is going to be at level 6, which means that I'm going to be getting 56,500 fonts on a weekly basis. You don't have to do this immediately, just remember to do them every single week. So if you do have Hotori, you should be able to upgrade this a little bit faster to generate a little bit more fonts on a weekly basis, because at the end of the day, our end game for NT at this point is just to get it level 45 as fast as possible. Unlocking your E6 S5 cheese is where, you know, she's gonna be dealing absolutely insane amount of damage from there. Then one last thing before we jump into the build for Hotori is that her actual personal damage during her ultimate just by itself is actually not that significant. So if you take a look into the multipliers, you are only dealing roughly less than 100% damage multiplier per hit, and then the very last is gonna be giving you 440%, the fifth is giving you 324%. It is not bad, but it is nothing to write home about, which is why I say running her as a sub DPS alongside with Nanali did in fact give me the highest possible damage output from this current Blossom team, because not only do you get a damage from Nanali, you also get a damage from Hotori, which is basically free damage because you don't really consume any of the timer, as well as the Vita butt damage, especially when you pair with Jiu Yuan to bring this up to a total of 6, right? And then for the second skill over here, this getting the additional 100% damage is going to be pretty decent, but you do want to unlock both of these big skills eventually. Then moving on into Hotori's build, currently there are two main ways you can go about it, either with a 4-piece charge efficiency, or you can go for the current the one I'm using, which is the 4-piece Lost Cosmos. Now the reason why I'm going to be using Lost Cosmos is because I do want to bring up her damage, as well as the ignore defense is going to help you scale a little bit more during the ultimate, because while it is nothing too insane during an ultimate damage, it is still a considerable amount, especially if you can bring up the Cosmos damage as well as the defense ignored, right? You could consider charge efficiency, but the reason why I don't want to have this is because Hotori's ultimate charge, this is not really seen as an ultimate energy cost, right? It is not affected by your energy efficiency or charge efficiency. It is strictly a Hotori's special energy bar based on the duration you actually use her in the field, right? So it is strictly based on time and nothing else. So the charge efficiency is pretty much not going to be useful for her, but the attack buff is going to be quite nice, especially since right now, because of Hotori, we have essentially removed the Sakiri slot from the Nanali Blossom slot right here. So if you do want to get this additional team-wide 15% attack for 20 seconds, you can consider either giving this to your MC to get a little bit more team-wide attack buff, or you can just simply forgo that and go for a little bit more damage for yourself. It's ultimately going to be up to you. I feel like for myself, I will eventually try to change out my MC's build to the 4-piece charge, but unfortunately, it is going to be a little bit more efficient for me to just farm for the 4-piece Cosmos, because I can give this to MC, I can give this to Cheese, and I can give this to Hotori, all three characters at the same time. Maybe in the future, when I have a little bit more stamina, I will start farming a little bit more charge efficiency, so I can slot this into my MC, but for now, I'm just going to be running the double Cosmos for both Hotori as well as MC. Then for the stats, I'm going for roughly 63% crit rate and 58% crit damage and 19.4% universal damage bonus. I would say that for Hotori, generally almost every single situation, you are in fact going to be running her with either a crit rate main stat or maybe attack or Cosmos main stat. But I would say crit rate does give you a lot of value if you cannot hit sufficient crit rate from your substats over here, which is definitely going to be the case because, like, unlike Nanali, because you can see over here, Nanali gives you a ridiculous amount of crit rate from her mod modules. So you can have 6%, 6%, 6%, adding out all the way up to the top. But for Hotori, especially if you do not have her arc, which gives you 16.8% crit rate at level 50, bring up to even higher later on, then missing her crits is where a crit rate main can drastically stabilize your overall damage. If you don't really want to care about the crit rate and just want to go for the highest possible damage per screenshot, you could go for either crit damage, cosmos damage, or even attack percent, as long as a subset gives you the double crit as well as attack over there. And the reason why I do not want to run the cycle intensity for Hotori, even though I do get myself the double crit, is because this cycle intensity stat, your entire team can only have a single unit cycle intensity taken into consideration for a Vita butt. So you can see over here, even in the in-game description, the cycle intensity is only determined by the participant with the higher final effect value. So because I already have one person, which is going to be 0, or generally 0 is going to be the least amount of damage for my entire team, giving them the cycle intensity instead will be a lot better than funneling all of your crit values into Hotori, just so that her ultimate stage she can also deal her own personal damage increase, which you can see from her arc right here, which is going to be extending your ultimate crit damage. So her entire kit is definitely signaling going towards building a crit damage build instead of giving her cycle intensity. Doesn't really matter if you want to run her as a main DPS or even as a sub DPS. And you can see from this screenshot over here, the damage on crit Hotori is also going to be leading us to a little bit of a higher for individual crits, especially the final hit. Honestly, not that big of a difference, but it's still a difference nonetheless, because our Vita butt's damage actually almost completely no change, since it's going to be purely determined by our MC. And then for our subsets for Hotori, it's just going to be very straightforward. Any crit rate, crit damage with attack percent as well as damage, just like how you would build for any normal DPS in NT. Then moving on to the arc segment, Marching Beyond Time, I would say this is a very nice damage increase, pretty much the best option if you didn't buy the rain, which is going to be seen from this shop over here. So if you already spend the additional money to get the limited press arc right here, awarding you with the rain that showed the roll, you can definitely consider running this with Hotori. But again, like I mentioned, the cycle intensity, honestly, it doesn't matter too much because Hotori don't really care. You want to give the highest cycle intensity to the MC, but it's mainly just so for additional cosmos damage as well as the crit rate. If you did not buy the rain that showed the world, then you're pretty much gonna be having a substantial damage increase if you do get Hotori's signature arc, because the next best in slot is gonna be Day Off, and Day Off is way better on your MC, right? Because you do not care about charge efficiency, you do not care about the attack. I mean, a little bit of an attack, but all these ultimate energy is completely useless for Hotori, so highly recommended to get this for the arc if you do not get the rain that showed the world. Then moving on to Awaken, or rather her dupes. Generally speaking, if you are going to be going for dupes in Hotori, I feel like she's a unit that doesn't really care too much about dupes unless you want to go for 3 dupes and above. So from E0, E1 as well as E2, I don't feel that there's going to be a significant damage increase. Only from E3 and above when you can activate at least 3 of these abilities, namely 2, 5, and 6. That is where her personal damage will start to scale off drastically. The resonance effect for the bonus 6 Awakening, you do get yourself a pretty much permanent team-wide 30% attack buff, which is going to be pretty substantial as of this current point of time, because we don't really have enough attack buffers, especially you take out Sakiri. But if you are going to be going for the Hotori dupes, I will highly recommend getting yourselves 5 first, especially if it's just going to be a single enemy on target, because your entire team will have damage increased by 15%, pretty much permanent for the entire time. If you're going to be up against like AoE scenarios where it's not only going to be one enemy, so for example, a lot of the bosses you guys are going to be seeing specifically in Note 8 as well as even in Note 9, this boss right here, it was split into 2, so there will be more than one target on field. So that is where you can actually go for the Hotori dupe number 6, which will give you straight up just a very basic 30% defense ignore, just to have the highest possible amount of damage increase, right? Then number 2 is gonna be just a 20% damage increase after time stop, so go for either 5 or 6 first, depending on the scenario, then fill up with a 2 if you actually already got both, right? Then for 1, 3, and 4, 1 is pretty much the least amount of damage increase out of the other 3. For 3 and 4, frankly, is not gonna be super significant unless you want to bring this Hotori all the way up to at least 3 dupes, and that's why you won't go for these 2 first, because if you're gonna be playing Hotori as a sub DPS, or rather not as a main DPS, getting her ultimate faster for her non-close timepiece actually doesn't really improve her damage by that much, because number one, her personal damage during the ultimate is already not that significant. So having her ultimate charge up faster doesn't always guarantee you the highest possible amount of damage output anyways. And number two, if you are going to be using Hotori in a Blossom team with Nanali as well as Jiuyuan, then it means that you are going to be waiting for the rest of the team's Esper cycles to fail. So namely for Zero's redirect skill, getting your Jiuyuan skill up, getting your Nanali skill up, and if your rest of the teammates do not have the Esper cycle, you actually do not get enough Vita buffs to be on field after you crest Hotori's ultimate, which means that getting your ultimate faster at low Dupes Hotori is just simply not worth it. So TLDR, early Dupes go for 5 and 6 first, get this afterwards, and if you really want to bring main DPS Hotori, that's when 1, 3, or rather 1, 3, and 4 is going to be a lot more significant. Now this is going to be our final segment, that's going to be Hotori's team comps. Currently there are only two main ways you want to play Hotori with, either with a sub DPS alongside Nanali to make your, pretty much in my opinion, the strongest team in the game, which is going to be a Blossom team, or you could even consider running a main DPS Hotori, running Sakiri as a team-wide support attack buff, as well as a grouping with Jiuyuan, and then you want to spam your rotations with your Zero, Jiuyuan, as well as Hotori to let her deal as much damage as possible. Now I personally have not tested enough HYPERCARRY Hotori to give you guys a honest feedback, so this video will only be purely discussing the 4-man Blossom team with Nanali, Hotori, Big P, or rather Zero, alongside with Jiuyuan. So for this team overall, the entire premise of working around your Blossom team is to get your Vita buffs as fast as possible to 6 stacks. So it's going to be 6 Vita buffs on the field, then cast your Hotori ultimate to deal a significant amount of damage during the time stop, where the Vita buffs are going to be attacking, Hotori is going to be attacking, and the whole cycle will pretty much reverse by itself. Your two main source of damage in this team is going to be roughly 40% Nanali, 40% Hotori, then roughly maybe 15% Jiuyuan, and the last 5% is going to be from your MC. Nanali is still going to be the highest possible damage on the field, because especially if you build a good enough Nanali with additional crit and crit damage, her personal on-field damage will definitely outweigh Hotori's ultimate damage during that time, but you do not have a 100% uptime with Nanali, which is why she's going to be played perfectly well with Hotori, since she has a damage downtime window, right? If you do not have Nanali's ultimate or you don't have Nanali's skill, then she doesn't deal a lot of damage whatsoever, which is the perfect time to either swap out for Jiuyuan to get more stacks. Previously used to be Sakiri and Jiuyuan to swap a little bit and get more Vita buffs, as well as the bullets from Jiuyuan, but now that you have Hotori, these two are pretty much gonna be in a perfect rotation with one another, where every single time Nanali has ultimate and skill, she will deal more damage, and then the moment you run out of ultimate skill, you swap back to your other two teammates to generate Vita buffs, and then finally lock out with Hotori to deal additional damage during your Nanali's damage window downtime, right? So that is how like the entire premise of this team is gonna be working. So the combo example that I'm gonna be using for myself, which is the combo that I kind of use for my 1 minute and 4 second clear, is going to be seen from the screen over here. So you open up with a Hotori skill, following up by a Jiuyuan skill, and then after you cast Jiuyuan skill, because you can quick swap out Jiuyuan, cast your MC's ultimate into your skill, and then after you get your MC skill, you can then swap back into Jiuyuan. So at this point, you are going to be getting 6 stacks of the roses, then cast your ultimate into your heavy attack to trigger the additional bullets, and in the middle of Jiuyuan's heavy attack, you can also quick swap back into Nanali to leg over EQR, which is going to be your arc, your ultimate, your skill, or everything. So the moment none of these enters on your cast ultimate, she'll pretty much permanently be on field, and you never ever swap out to anyone else until Nanali hits the full Esper cycle bar, which it would then eventually switch into MC's skill or later on. For this particular point over here, sometimes it will depend if you have enough Esper cycle, depending if the enemy is gonna do a parry attack. So if you can parry the enemy here, you actually charge up a lot faster, then you can swap into the MC. But I do want to take note that you ideally want to make Nanali stand on field as long as possible, because your MC's E has not gone up yet. There's still a cooldown for MC's E, so it doesn't really make any sense to swap out of Nanali into MC, since you're just going to be dealing way less damage with MC on field. So just make use of the full ultimate and skill duration. Then at the end of both ultimate and skill, that is where your MC skill should come back. So swap into the MC, cast your skill, then at this point swap back into Jiuyuan to cast her skill. So at this point, it's going to be when you're going to be able to copy your MC skill as well as your Jiuyuan skill. Then you can swap back into Hotori to cast her ultimate, where she will start dealing absolutely insane amounts of damage, right? And a little note, during Hotori's ultimate, you can actually press jump attack 3 times just to squeeze out a little bit more free damage before you need to do the rest of your ultimate attack chain, right? Then at the end of Hotori's ultimate, with all the Vita buffs spawning, you can then swap back into MC. And remember, because Hotori just copied your MC skill, you will also have full gauge, so you can instantly swap into your Nanari EQR to do the full rotation all over again, attack until full, and then you can then swap back into your MC and you repeat the cycle all over again. Alright, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, but this is going to be the personal rotation I use, which I found to a very high degree of success over here. And then one last tip is that for the very last rotation, which is where you swap out your MC into Nanari to do a Nanari ultimate again, you can swap to Jiu Yuan first before Nanari to squeeze a little bit more damage if you have enough time to just get rid of the enemy. Now with that, we're pretty much coming to the end of this video. Just a quick little summary and whether or not you should be pulling for Hotori. I feel that for every single Nanari puller that basically have her in the Blossom team, this is pretty much one of the highest pull valued unit that you can find, because this team right now is pretty much one of, if not the most complete team we have in NTE. And we know for a fact that in version 1.1 we're going to be getting Lacrimosa as well as Chaos, which is going to lean more towards the Chaos team on the other side. So that is not going to be having any, or rather as much benefits to a Nanari team comp with Hotori. So highly recommend that for what Nanari means, get yourself a copy of Hotori. But if you do not play Nanari, you just want to go for all in a Chaos team with Daffodil, with Lacrimosa, that is going to be having a priority. So it really depends on what you personally prefer. I would say you can't really go wrong with whichever unit you want to put in NT for now, because the endgame content as of this point, you can see the Beyond the Rails, even as a complete free to play, you can already full clear 3 stars with 16 days left on the clock, and I have not even hit 100 level 45. So there should be a lot of leeway. As long as you have your levels and your development, you shouldn't really face that many issues when it comes to team building or just generally using units that you like to use from the start, right? For Hotori, if not for her combat capabilities with Nanari and Blossom team, her global passive effect for this auction house is going to be quite an additional quality of life, because it does allow you to refresh your auction house a little bit more, and time stop does in fact work in all endgame content as well as paying Paul highs to stop the timer. So just a very nice overall quality of life, right? So with that, we've come to the end of today's content. Let me know what you guys think of Hotori in NTE. Word of the day is gonna be big. Join Discord. Use code POKE10 for gamer subs. All the best, see you guys next time. Take care.